Hey, it's the podcast guy.
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United at the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast in association with Lucky Star Gin. I'm your host Mike, and on our panel today we have Neil and Gabriel. We may be joined by another in a moment, but we've got Neil and Gabriel at the moment. We are going to be covering the 20th must-win match draw, and we're going to look forward to the trip to Notts County. Do apologise to anyone who's watching on YouTube for the Mr. Potato Head, but when I was trimming it yesterday, I went too deep and I had to take it all off. Engagement, as always, is really, really important. Please do the like, share, retweets, let everyone know as many as possible, and it kind of spreads the word for the podcast and shares the pain amongst everyone else. We're going to dive straight in. I didn't actually write down the last appearances, but Neil is still clinging on to the fact that he's never been on after a loss, even though he was on the lost episode. But hello, Neil. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Mike.
Good. And Gabriel, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, excellent. So, club news. The ladies put up a very good performance, but lost to Dartford today, 2-0. Dartford at top of the league. So it was a good performance, but it was against the league leaders, so it was always going to be hard. As I said earlier on Twitter, I'm not going to be a weatherman because I did promote and push. Go, guys, lovely weather. Everyone come on down. And it rained, and it was horrible, and it was miserable. So we won't be doing that again. Ladies side do need some bits and pieces of help on match day. So if anyone can help, either contact me and I'll put you in touch. I don't think it's something that you have to commit to all the time. I think they're just like a little group of people that can call on to do various jobs, or indeed there are jobs to do as well, like things like scoreboard, looking after the scoreboard and just other bits and pieces. So it's a good opportunity to get involved and see things from a slightly different side. Also, thanks to everyone for asking. Sally is very well. The cough is still going very strong, but she's well and alive, and she came to the ladies' match today, so people could actually see her. But we will get onto the game. We'll start with you, Gabriel. What was your thoughts and hopes before the match? What were you we all know it's another must-win match, but what were you hoping for before the game?
To be honest, I'm not hoping much since a while because there were so many must-win games, and since we've been together to that Harrogate game, that was a must-win, and we didn't win. We actually lost. I'm a bit disappointed. Even at the next game against Doncaster, that was another very, very crucial game. I wasn't hoping anything until the last 20 minutes when we got one up. And then I was again disappointed. So I'm not hoping much because the results are against us. And I don't know. I have a sensation that whatever Harry Kane curse must be, ours is 10 times worse.
And Neil, before the match, what were you kind of hoping for out of this?
I was optimistic before I saw the lineup. Then when I saw the lineup, I became pessimistic. And I was wondering where the goals were going to come from. Because to me, it seemed quite a defensive, try not to lose type lineup.
Fair enough. Well, that leads us on to the next question. So on the lineup, I got 7 out of 11. I am going to very quickly get bored of this game because almost got no hope under Mr. Morrison. But what were you thinking with Arnold coming in, Clay and Coley coming in from nowhere? What were your? I know you said you were pessimistic, but what were your thinking behind? What do you think he was trying to do?
Dino has played very well, but I didn't think Arnold coming in would necessarily make us any weaker. So that was fine. I was surprised that Patrick wasn't featuring anywhere. So presuming he was injured. I thought that Coley was basically no longer on Morrow's radar, and the same with Clay. So I was thinking, well, that wasn't a tactical reason for them coming in. I suspect that was because we didn't have the fit bodies on the bench, or perhaps he thought they were players that could have coped with a really heavy pitch better, and they hadn't had the draining minutes up on the Bradford ploughed field.
Fair enough. Which still cracks me up that the Bradford pitch was playable, and yet the one at Barrow was apparently unplayable. If anyone's seen the pictures, it's very interesting. But Gabriel, what were your thoughts, sort of the kick off the lineup, the players coming in from nowhere and the shake up a little bit?
Well, after 3 consecutive defeats, you have to change. That's clear. And you have to try to do something different in the hope that something different will result from it. Of course, the main surprise was the goalkeeper, after insisting so much with Dino and giving him credit after what he performed in the last seconds of the Doncaster game. I'm not sure why he was ditched now after 3 more games. But Steve Arnold is a good goalkeeper, and whenever he stepped in, he was good enough. And it's not there that we had our weakness.
No, fair enough. Well, we got off to a really great start. We conceded a goal very, very quickly. How, Gabriel, start with you. How were you sort of feeling at that point? Were you like, oh God, this is a nightmare, or were you
Absolutely.
kind of like, long time to get it back?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a total nightmare, and we have to look. I don't have any statistics and any numbers. How many goals did we concede in the first 15 minutes? How many goals have we conceded in the last 15 minutes? How many own goals have we scored? I think Ben Goodleaf was a great guy and a great defender, and he puts his body on the line. But from this, he was unlucky this year, and he scored at least 2 or 3. I'm not sure if the Wrexham sequence he touched the ball. Buzani seems to suggest that he has touched the ball for the decisive goal, and he had been disturbed by that. The Barrow game was another own goal that was not accounted for. Was an own goal by Sounmi or by Omari. So we have own goals, we have last minute goals, we have first minute goals. It's hard to keep your enthusiasm. I admire all of you who manage to keep staying positive in this chain of misfortunes, let's call it.
Medication. Lots and lots of medication. Neil, how are you? I mean, I was standing next to you, so I know how you were feeling. But for everyone else, how were you feeling after that first few minutes, the goal going in?
Well, all of us around were sort of the same opinion. It was same old, same old. We were undone down our left-hand side by a swift counter-attack. Nino was out of position. Sam was caught flat-footed. And teams just seemed to exploit going down the wing, cutting the ball back, and the ball just always seems to fall to feet, and there's never a defender in the way. So I just wish we could do it as well as other teams seem to invariably do it to us. The only good side was that it was after with 6 minutes gone rather than just 6 minutes to go. So there was always a chance we could get something back. But but I was pretty cheesed off, thinking, here we go again. We're chasing the game. How we need the early goal, because it would just make all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the sequence. I'm never very good at these things, but I know it wasn't long before we got back into it, but I'm fairly certain Steve had to make a save before we got back into it, or shortly after we did. I can't remember. But we did get back into it. And he was getting quite a bit of abuse for not controlling the ball, not doing an awful lot. But it was Josh's hard work on the right, got the ball in. It was a bit of a scrambled effort, but like you said, Neil, they don't really go for us very often. So we got one there. Gabriel, how were you feeling when we got back to 1-1, or were you still worried about all those chances they were carving open on us?
Yeah. I'm trying to not to make too much hope, because I don't want to be disillusioned again. So, 1-1, it's great. You have all the game to play for. Even if you win against Colchester, it's not gonna assure that you will get saved, but it will put you a little bit back in the fight. That's all. So, I wasn't too enthusiastic about this game. To me, it's 90% gone. Though I remember what Leicester, before they got the title, they had that incredible escape when they won 7 games out of 9 in the last 9 games. And what they said was it wasn't such a surprise because they were narrowly losing all their games. And this year we are very narrowly losing all our games. We are, I think, maybe half of the games we had not necessarily been the better team, but we had the numbers on our side. We had more shots, more chances, and yet we didn't win any. So I don't know, maybe these tables will turn, but it's such a long shot with the present level of trust, of confidence, of everything in the team.
So you heard it here first. Gabriel's tipping us for the title next year after we escape this year. But Neil, where were you kind of at the 2-2? You're like, right, we're back in it. Not 2-2, 1-1 even. We're back in it. And did you think we could keep going for it, or were you just like, oh, we're just putting a band-aid over the inevitable?
I thought when we got back to 1-1, we were potentially going to go on and win it, particularly after the Harry lob over the keeper, which was just agonising. You know, if that had been our defender on the line, it would have skewed off his boot and gone into the roof of the net. But that was a brilliant bit of defending. We'd had the other penalty, which, having now looked back on the highlights, you know, a very strong claim for handball in the box. So we were creating problems. They looked desperate at the back. They looked very unassured, and I just thought it was going to be our day.
Well, I actually noted that if half-time had come and it was 3-3 or 4-4, people would have been like, okay, that's fair enough. Because, I mean, they had some good chances. We had some good chances. You mentioned the Harry one. There was also the possible penalty shout. Then Ben had a header as well. So we had all good chances. I mean, the penalty shout, we are all up in arms. Oh my God, it's another one we're not getting. But on this one was slightly different because, in fairness to the officials, it was from the wrong side for the linesman to see it, and the referee's view possibly wouldn't have had such a good view of that one. So you can accept that one almost like, okay, we'll let you have that one, but the Wrexham one, it's like, how? The bloke almost caught it. I mean, there was one highlight, apart from the goals, one highlight of the first half where the linesman bit back. I after his getting quite a bit of abuse over an offside decision, and he decided to turn around and sort of, no. So that was interesting. I think someone said that's the first time this season they've even done it, so that was fun. Second half, they seem to come out of the traps a lot quicker. I don't know whether it was that whole thing of playing to the wrong ends or what was going on. So, how are you sort of feeling as they came out second half? Were you hoping we just hung on, or were you still quite confident?
I was still confident. They didn't really do. They were playing better. They seemed a little bit more in control, but they weren't really creating any sort of major problems until we had that dipped cross shot that went in that Stevie Arnold made a really superb save, because that was just that was a world-class save. I think any keeper would have been proud of that. That was pretty good. Yeah. So again, I thought, perhaps, it is going to be our day, because that's another thing that hasn't gone in.
Yeah, they certainly had plenty of chances, and what we normally sit there bemoaning is they've had one or two chances and they scored from both of those chances, whereas this time we're making saves. I mean, I'm looking at the stats and it says they only had 4 shots on target, and I'm like, well, I'm sure they had more than that, but apparently they only had 4 shots on target. So, Gabriel, how were you sort of feeling through the second half with the way they started and we were kind of on the back foot?
Well, they weren't an impressive team at all. So I still thought that the game can go either way. And what I want to say is that I feel that they will have a very hard time holding on to their position, not against us necessarily, but against FGR. That won yesterday, and they have a new coach, so maybe they get the momentum. For us, the chance to getting the momentum with the new coach has already passed, and we are back to our lack of confidence and lack of trust. But I do have a feeling that FGR can turn it around at the last minute, because Colchester looked very bad. Grimsby, I don't know, it's on a chain. They haven't won probably from the start of the year. So it's also frustrating, because we could have had so many points easily more, and we would have been above both these teams. We're not that bad. We're not that bad. We had a lot of bad luck too. We're not good either. We belong to that pack, but we could have been 10 points more easily with just a bit of luck and a bit of more confidence.
Yeah, that's a very fair comment. Of the if we had slightly better luck, we're not saying that we would have been pushing for the playoffs, but we would have been in that lower pack, possibly worried about and looking over our shoulder a bit. But fairly comfortable. Sorry, Neil, I jumped in as you were about to say something there.
I was about to say, sort of since Morrison took over, if you take the Morecambe game out when we lost 1-0, we were by far we weren't really in the contest. In the other matches, if all of those where we'd been draws had been wins, and where we'd lost had been draws, we'd have had 13 more points than we got at the moment. We'd be sitting in 21st place, only 2 points behind Donny, and we'd have a 5-point cushion to the teams below us. So it is such small margins. So we could be in a much, much, much better position. But those, 9 games, he hasn't had a win yet. Yeah. Other clubs would have he'd have been sacked by now.
Well, let's get to the penalty first. So 34 league games, I think someone was, or 40 odd league games, I think someone was saying that we haven't had a penalty. I know we did have one in the League Cup, but no penalty for ages. Suddenly we get one. There was mass confusion on the sidelines. We didn't really know what was supposed to be going on. Seems there was a bit of confusion amongst the players. So from your point, Gabriel, tell us your thoughts on the penalty, of the confusion, who was taking it, what the Colchester players were doing to the penalty spot. There was some conversation there. It did look a bit ropey today when I was at the women's match. I'll be honest, I was doing the goals and had a quick look. I meant to take a photo, but I didn't. But what were your thoughts on the whole penalty and the surrounding issues?
Yeah, it was a question mark who will take the penalty, as our main penalty takers were, from what I recall, Rob Milson and Harry Beautyman, none of them being on the pitch. And I don't recall if anybody else has taken a penalty in the last 2-3 years from the team. Of course, in hindsight, you would say it shouldn't have been Harry Smith, because he's at one goal only in the last 15 games. He's not in a good form. He fights every time. He's a good striker, but he would be better in a team that has a bit more confidence and a bit more trust. Now he's together with the others in this slump, and but it's stupid to say it after the game, because we know he missed, and everybody else would have been better now. I don't know who could have taken it. I would have looked at one of the midfielders, Charlie Lakin, because he played very well in the last few games. But
I mean, Neil, it seemed that Sam had the ball and Harry went and took it off of him. Now, there's been some conversation where people have said that some teams do that, where they give the ball to one player to make everyone think that one player is taking it, to get the crowd attack sort of going at them, and then they switch it last second so the keeper doesn't think, oh Christ, I don't know what this one's doing. But it can't have been that, because it was such a long time then between Harry taking the ball and actually getting to take the penalty, because there was that player that was down for a long time. But what were your kind of thoughts from surrounding that whole situation and the penalty itself?
Well, I said right from the out that there was no doubt that Harry Smith would take the penalty.
Yeah.
And I've looked back on the full run of the match, and essentially they were just it always seemed that Harry was going to take it. Sam was talking to him, and then Sam was more concentrating on making the penalty spot, because all of their players had stood around it and roughed it up while their player was getting attention. So I think he was just sort of there supporting Harry. And to me, he seemed to be the one that had decided he was going to take it. That's his job. He's our principal striker. And I think he backed himself to score it.
Yeah, I mean, I said at the time, several times after, obviously, as Gabriel said, in hindsight, everyone's an expert. But I do feel that if he had just put everything behind it, if the keeper had saved it, probably would have injured his hand or his ribs or something, or there was a chance of carrying it into the goal. But it didn't happen. I mean, I think at that point, there was about 10, 12 minutes to go. And I think, to be honest, it would have been a terrible 10 or 12 minutes, because we would have just retreated back onto the 6-yard box and had them peppering us and coming at us all the time. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard one. You've got to back whoever fancies taking it. But you've got Goody in there who's done it in the penalty shootouts. You've got Eastie who's done it in the penalty shootouts. As you said, Lakin could have taken it, but he is the top goal scorer and he's a striker. So why wouldn't he take a penalty? There was no Dino on the pitch to go and take it off of him. But we ended in a draw, even though several people keep saying it's a loss. It was a draw. Another 1-1 draw. There are 12 to go. It does feel like a loss. But what are your thoughts of where it leaves us, Gabriel?
We already know. Some of us don't want to say it, but like it's 95% already in the National League, and only a miracle can save us. We're scoring very little. We haven't won. Neil was saying earlier about the 13 points that we could have had. I'm looking only at 6, but with 6 we would have been up there at the line. Barrow, we come up so nicely 2-1, and then we scored that own goal at that mess. Then Doncaster, 10 seconds to go. We have the ball, and this one, we were so unhappy that we were not given penalties, and that the others were given a penalty at the 95th minute. And now when we have it, we miss it. That's only these 6 points that we had basically in our pocket. With them, we would have been there in the. There's still games that can be won. It will be Grimsby here. It will be Crawley. It will be Accrington Stanley, which is not a team in the fight for the playoffs. So there's still games that can be won. But if you don't win, if you don't score, it's hard to hope for anything. And when you have a new coach coming in, the next few games are those that set the trend. And he started well. We almost won with Barrow. We drew at Mansfield. That is the top now of the league. I think they won all the games around us, and only against us they drew, at least at home. And that was a good moment. Then we go at Walsall, and we had good chances, but we don't win. Then comes the Harrogate game, then comes Doncaster. That's the moment that we could have turned it around. I feel that this moment is past, and inside the team, I'm not in the dressing room, I'm not at the training ground, but I feel that inside the team there's a lack of confidence in each other, a lack of connection. Even Steve Morrison tries to change every game that we don't have a first 11. As you said, you can only guess 6 or 7 of the first 11, and the others are efforts to make things different, to change something. But it's really, really hard to see things changing from now on. There is enough time, theoretically.
Yeah.
I think you have to be fair to Morrison. You know, the changes he made yesterday were, in hindsight, were quite inspired. Clay had by far the best game that he had. Again, watching back on the highlights, he was winning he was winning tackles, he was winning everything, he was getting the second balls in midfield. He played really, really well. Coley played far better than he played prior to him, being dropped out the team. So those two changes turned out to be quite inspired. The Arnold change, for whatever reason he was playing, again, was inspired. He saved us. He didn't cost us, the win. He probably saved us from, a loss on another day. So, you have to say the decisions he's made in pretty well every single one of his 9 games have been justified by what happened as a consequence.
I'm not criticizing the coach in any way. I like him, and I want him to stay for the next season and to have the summer to prepare and to build his own team. I think we played better with him, that he changed some of the things that were happening at the team. And about Josh Coley, he's such a wild card because he's very good offensively. He always has been when he played. But to me, defensively, he's below Omari Patrick. He cost us the game at Plymouth, definitely, with that penalty. And there were many games in which he was easily passed, from what I've seen at home. Crew, it's an example that came to my mind.
Yeah. Okay, well, I feel that your point, Gabriel, is that we're 95% down. A few people feel that we'd rather just get the 100% out the way so we can then start
Exactly.
concentrating elsewhere.
I
But
agree.
they keep dangling this little carrot out there that it's still possible, and it is still possible, and it is the hope that kills everyone. There wasn't an awful lot to discuss or comment from people about the game itself, other than the penalty, and we've lost again. I did check beforehand. I know, Gabriel, you haven't heard the interview we're going to talk about in a sec, but most of the comments and conversation around it has been an interview that Steve did that he hasn't come across very well. Not my interview. He came across brilliantly in my interview. But Neil, I know you've heard it, and I know you've sort of seen some opinions elsewhere. I mean, what are your thoughts on the interview and sort of the outcome where it's mushroomed out into this big thing? So what's your thinking on that?
I think Steve Morrison will sort of regret the way that he responded to the questions, and walking away and stopping the interview was similar to some of the strops that some of the more famous Premier League managers have done in the past. But I'm afraid I don't think Ahmed showed how he tends to ramble and have not very succinct questions. So I think he set himself up for the fall. He probably was the first. This was probably the first post-match interview of all of them, and Steve was feeling particularly raw, and he touched a nerve, and that was the response. Some of the national comments about it, some people who were going to listen to it expecting to end up roasting Morrison, and actually have come back sort of saying those were some pretty sort of stupid questions. That the interviewer came over as sounded very young, sounded very immature, sounded very raw, and the outcome was probably to be expected in that context.
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, he's only been here a few weeks. He doesn't know everyone's ins and outs. He thought he was talking to a BBC. Well, he is talking to a BBC reporter, but he obviously doesn't know all the other stuff that Ahmed does for the club, which, whether it should come into play at a professional club or not, I don't know, but it does come into play because Ahmed does an awful lot. He does a lot of pretty much the mix-up for all the ladies' matches, and there are lots of things there. Yes, the questions possibly weren't the best questions to be asking someone who's just come away from a draw that feels like a defeat and things are not going well. However, I do also think that a far more sensible answer would have been along the lines of, I think you're asking about the decision of who's taking the penalty there, and then go off and not give you the answer that I want to give you rather than the question you're actually asking me. Because it would be very rare on those interviews that the reporter comes back and goes, no, that's not what I asked you. And they're not going to push back on it. They'll just take whatever sound bites you give them. So, yeah, there's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other. I do think the reaction, as you said, Neil, people who heard it and go, well, that's really disappointing. And then other people hearing it on the back of that are expecting some massive fireworks. And then they're not getting quite that. So there is this strange kind of thing to it. I have seen some very knee-jerk reactions of, that's terrible, he should go for that interview. It's like, whoa, hang on. He's obviously upset, Ahmed, and he should really apologise and have a conversation. And if it is a case of he doesn't like questions being asked certain ways, perhaps tell Ahmed and say, this is what I'm wanting. I'm not sure how much power you have over that. It's an outside broadcaster. But yeah, it was a hard listen, I'll be honest. I know, Gabriel, you're going to listen to it afterwards, but it was a bit of a hard listen, and a little bit disappointing from my point of view, because I'd actually had loads of comments on Saturday about people saying that they'd listened to my one. I know I'm going to sound really egotistical here, but they'd listened to my one and how he'd come across really, really well, and they'd slightly change their opinion of him. And then that one comes out, and I'm like, oh God. But we'll see. I mean, it is one of those things. It's a hard thing when you come off a loss. See, I'm saying it now. And when you come off what feels like a loss, to answer some questions about it, and probably feeling quite prickly, and the questions being interpreted as a slight on, well, we're not scoring enough goals and we're conceding goals. How do we solve that? It's like, well, yeah, if I knew how to stop, if I knew how both those things would happen, I'd be the best manager in the world. He did say that. So he's right in that respect, but could have handled it better, I think.
To put it into context, Tony's interview with him after the match was probably the best Tony post-match interview of all of them, which I thought was a bit ironic.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think a lot of people did that. They said, "Oh, this interview," and people going, "I've not heard anything in that interview that you're talking about." And then they go, "No, not the club one, this one." Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, Gabriel.
I was trying to say also, to put it in the context, when he was appointed, I didn't know anything about him. I Googled him on Wiki, and he has a tag on him from the Coventry episode that he threw his players under the bus. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't listened to the interview, but maybe he's also stressed by this possibility that he will say something that he will regret. So he's trying to avoid questions that would take him in that direction. It also happened to Troy Deeney, now that he threw a player under the bus and he was fired for that. So it's a tricky moment, as we said, after a bad game. You have to watch what you're saying because you don't want to regret it.
Exactly. I mean, the whole way through my chat with him, and I know it would have come across, is I'm literally terrified that if I speak to a member of staff or player and they say something on here that could then get them in trouble. So I'm always like, don't say anything bad. Don't give out any controversial. Don't name names. So yeah, it must be quite difficult to have that mindset of, I really need to watch everything I say. But Troy Deeney didn't throw their player under the bus. He tied them down, drove over them, reversed back again, and drove over them again. He wasn't just thrown under the bus. That was horrific with what he did. But we move on, as always with football. There's always another game. As Johnny's book says, that's the great thing about it. No matter how good or bad it is, there's always another one that comes around to take the pressure off. And we are up at Notts County with the waivers. I'm sure they'll have great delight with waving us on and all the rest of it. They're not doing so great at the moment. But Gabriel, what are your thoughts on, apart from scoring and not conceding, what do we need to do to win the game?
It's very hard. You don't even know who's going to play. We moved again in the last few games. We moved again to our classic direct game, I feel. We're passing less. We were trying to pass more when Steve Morrison came. It's hard to say. I don't know much about Notts. I know they're struggling. They fired their manager. They still didn't get the results they want with the new manager.
He moved on. They didn't fire him. I think he went to.
I've said that again, and I said that last time too, and you corrected me last time as well. But as you say about the last day's game that it was a loss, it comes to me that he was fired. No. But he might have been on the chopping block anyway, because they were not happy with the latest string of the results. No. They were hoping that they will be up there together with Wrexham for a direct promotion, and they seem to be there. They were leaders at a certain point in time. You can win any time. The luck can turn on you. Yeah, we were close to winning at Mansfield. We had a very good game against Wrexham. You can win. It just depends on what the ball wants in that day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they were hoping to be up near the Autos. I think they were expecting to be up near the Autos. But I mean, it is the kind of game that they would be expecting to win. They want revenge for old Wavegate and the 5-1. But wouldn't it be lovely, Neil, that the only team we do a double over would be Notts County and start our amazing 7-game winning run?
That was exactly what I was going to say, that we always do the double over somebody every season, and Notts County is the last opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Notts County apparently give a penalty away every 3 games.
Oh, God.
So we could get another penalty. So that would be interesting. Still have never forgiven them for when they beat us 3-2 in our National League winning season. So I think it's all lined up for a shock away win.
And Harry Smith hat-trick with a penalty to top it off.
Yeah,
there we go. Well, that does actually lead us on to the predictions. So I can't remember everyone actually, but there were 4 maximums, I think, yesterday. I want to say 4. I'm sure it's 4. Not you, Neil. 2 of those maximums were Paul and Andy, so they draw even further ahead of us.
Oh, no.
They're not quite on double my points yet, but it is not far away. I'm on 58 points and they're on 112 each. So I think they'll get double my points in the next few weeks. So that'll be fun for me. I'd really enjoy creating a competition by losing. But the code is on the screen to anyone who's watching, so do join in. Obviously, this season's you're not going to win, but you'll get on the early doors next season, so we can get it all started up again. But what are your thoughts? What are your predictions? I know, Gabriel, you said that we don't know who's going to be playing. We don't know any of the details, but what are your early predictions for the game?
Well, I think half of our last 10 games or 15 games ended up 1-1, so it's a very safe bet to say 1-1.
Fair enough. Neil, what's your early prediction? Don't forget, obviously, you can still change it on the entry, so don't worry, you're not sticking to this.
I want to say 2-1, but then if you go 2-1, it's destined you're never going to be right all season. So therefore, I might change it. But no, I think, as I said on Saturday, 2-1, and I was just a penalty save away from being right. I'm going to go 2-1 on Tuesday.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to go 3-1 because I've already said Harry Smith hat-trick. So, and what's going to happen now is Harry Smith won't be picked. So that's exactly what's going to happen. Because as you said, I haven't got one right yet this season. But that's kind of bringing us to a close of this episode of Sutton Podcast. Thanks everyone for your attention. Joe thought we were on at 7, so that's why he didn't make it. So I was looking forward to his eye roll at the attention. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred podcast or even podcast platforms. And thank you to our sponsors, Lucky Star Gin. Thank you to our panel today, Neil and Gabriel. Thank you for listening. We will be back, I think, on Thursday this week with Mark and possibly Dan, but he was already a doubt to travel before yesterday. So whether he's going to travel or not, I don't know. But I'll say his name and put some pressure on him to travel and come on Thursday as well. But take care, and we will catch up soon. See ya. Bye-bye.
United!